She always said she hated early mornings. They make my eyes itch and my soul retract, she'd complain, like 6 a.m. was some existential threat. So imagine my surprise when her phone started screaming at 4:11. Not once, not twice. A few times a week, always when I was already tying my shoes for the gym. At first, I chalked it up to some accidental setting, like maybe she was tracking her ovulation in military time. But Holly didn't track anything. She lived in curated chaos, crystals on windowsills, half-read books about boundary setting, smoothie powder subscriptions she never used. We've been together almost 11 years. Long enough to forget what I ever saw in spontaneous energy. Long enough to notice the minor vibrations in a person's behavioral tectonics. That alarm didn't belong. It wasn't synced to anything, not our schedule, not hers. I asked once, and she laughed. Not a normal laugh. It wasn't her light, dismissive chuckle. It was sharp, a beat too loud, the kind of laugh that people use when they've just barely dodged a bullet. Oh, that? I don't even know why that's there, she said. Must have been a setting from an old calendar app. But Holly hadn't updated her phone since the Obama administration. She didn't trust tech. She still used a paper planner with little sun stickers for her emotional reset days. So I started watching. Not obsessively. Just logging data. 3 weeks, pattern confirmed. The 4:11 alarm rang only on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, the same days I was out the door before sunrise. Same time every time. And it always stopped at 4:13, like someone silenced it fast. She never mentioned it again. I never brought it up again. That's when I knew. Not suspected, knew. I work in systems analysis. Patterns are my currency. And that alarm was a new variable in an otherwise static function. The morning routines had been flawless for years. No reason for sudden noise injection. Unless the noise served a purpose. So I cloned her phone. I'd done it for clients before, paranoid execs needing their own backups without legal footprints. It's legal, technically, if you don't distribute the contents. Morally, I didn't blink. I wanted to know who she was. Turns out, she wasn't Holly. Not the version I knew. Her texts were brief, too clinical for someone so allegedly emotional. No emojis, no pet names. Just coordinates. For 20, front door unlocked, blue hoodie this time? It was logistical. Efficient. Like someone placing an order. The man's name was Brent. I knew because she referred to him once in an email that mistakenly landed in her sent folder. Brent was her accountability partner from a healing intensive retreat she'd gone to last year. I remember that retreat, $900 for 5 days of yoga and processed vegan meals. I remember because she came back smelling like sage and suddenly hated the sound of clinking cutlery. That's when she moved all the silverware to a drawer closer to the floor. To ground the energy, she said. Brent was married. His number was stored under Heather Retainer Renewal. I appreciated the creativity. I checked the call logs. He only ever called after 4:10 a.m. Never before. Never in the afternoon. Always early, always short, always Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays. She had sex with him in our bed. I verified that using the security camera I'd long since installed in the garage, a silent witness pointed conveniently at the front entrance. She didn't even bother making it look discreet. They kissed under our motion light, giggling like teenagers, and then she'd pull him inside as if she were leading a personal training client into a consultation room. All before I finished my deadlifts. So I pivoted. I didn't rage. I didn't confront. That's what she'd expect. She'd spin it into a victim narrative. You violated my privacy, or we were emotionally over already. I knew the script. I've debugged enough human behavior to see the loops. Instead, I listened more. Nodded a lot. Asked about her dream of owning her own boutique dental suite. It's about impact, she said. Helping people feel seen, heard, safe. I told her I'd back it. 60/40ths investment. She lit up like it was Christmas. The plan was to gut renovate a small unit downtown. I covered the deposits. She handled the design. All contracts went through me, my LLC, my ownership, her name nowhere but the vision boards. I played the role of supportive husband so well, she never once asked for access. Why would she? She was already getting hers, in more ways than one. I waited until the ribbon-cutting ceremony. She'd invited Brent, called him her spiritual business advisor. I greeted him warmly, offered him a kombucha, and smiled when she gave her speech about resilience and feminine leadership. 2 weeks later, I shut the whole operation down. Changed the locks, froze the accounts, sold the equipment to a rival practice. Legally, it was mine. Morally, I'll let you decide. Holly tried calling. I didn't answer. Then she texted. Then she emailed. Then she showed up crying on the doorstep. I watched her on the camera and didn't open the door. At some point, Brent stopped showing up. Her sister asked me what happened. I sent a PDF detailed with dates, times, financial records, and one still image from the garage camera. The rest unraveled itself. I didn't need to say a word. She'll never know exactly how I figured it out. But every time she hears a phone alarm, I hope it rings at 4:11. Holly started talking to me differently, and not in the way most people mean. It wasn't the content, it was the delay. A half-second pause between question and answer, like she was running a diagnostic before speaking. That's not how she used to be. She was fast, impulsive, sometimes annoyingly so. But now, when I'd ask something simple, did you pay the power bill? Or, what's your schedule Friday? There'd be a flicker of calculation behind her eyes. That, and the repetition. She started parroting back questions I'd already asked her. What's my schedule Friday? As if clarifying, but always with this weightless tone, buying time. I logged the behavior. I didn't say anything, just added it to the mental clipboard. The 4:11 a.m. alarm still rang twice a week like clockwork, and every time I asked about it, she swore it was some app thing. Might be linked to my period tracker. But I checked her apps. She hadn't updated a single one in over 6 months, and none of them had alarm permissions. One night, I was scrolling through our joint banking app, and I noticed a $47 charge at a place called Cafe Thorn. I've never heard of it. Curious, I looked it up, open 24 hours, breakfast menu starting at 5 a.m. The charge came through at 5:17. That's not odd unless you're married to someone who claims they sleep until 7 o'clock and hates mornings so much she once cried when I opened blinds before coffee. I asked her casually what she did that morning. She blinked and said she'd slept in and meditated. No mention of Cafe Thorn. I could feel the lies starting to settle in her throat like sediment. She used to speak in full, fast sentences, like she couldn't wait to be heard. Now everything was fragmented. Safe. Scripted. Another week went by, and I started checking our Google Home history. She didn't know it recorded queries few people do. That's when I found it. Set alarm 4:11 a.m. Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays. Set 3 weeks ago. What time is sunrise? Driving time to downtown from Oak Ridge. How to disable motion lights. These weren't spiritual wellness searches. These were operational searches. I felt the chill of it then, the realization that her days had a whole other layer when I wasn't invited to. Not emotionally, not logistically. She had architecture I hadn't been consulted on. And the worst part? She wasn't even good at hiding it. That's what got me. It wasn't that she lied, people lie. It was how little effort she put into maintaining the facade. Like she'd already left the marriage and was just waiting for the lease to expire. One morning, she forgot her phone in the kitchen. Normally, she's surgically attached to it, even in the shower. I looked. Not texts. Those were always suspiciously clean. But her notes app was a mess. She'd written out entire scripts. One titled, "Excuse if he asks about Cafe." Another just said, "Make sure he never meets Brent." That name again. Brent. I looked him up. Her healing intensive posted group photos, and there he was, toothy, shirt too tight, holding a crystal the size of a grapefruit. One of those men who talks about chakras and self-alignment but still keeps his ex-wife's nudes in a Dropbox. I dug deeper. Found his business page. He was running some kind of personal clarity coaching scam, which, I realized, matched up with the PayPal transfers coming out of our account labeled CC Renewal. I asked her about those once. She said they were for continuing education. Helps me keep my certification up. But Holly hadn't taken a class in 3 years. I checked. I always check. The final straw wasn't even tech. It was sent. She came home one morning, claimed she was walking the dog. But the dog was still curled up in his bed when I got downstairs. She'd forgotten to take him. Worse, she reeked of cologne. Not mine. Something citrusy, woodsy. Inviting in a frat boy turned tantric coach sort of way. I remembered that smell. She'd once gagged in a Sephora after spraying a tester of it. It's what insecure men wear to feel dangerous, she said. But now she was bathed in it. I said nothing. Just stared at her until she felt the heat. What? She snapped. Why are you looking at me like that? I told her she smelled different. She laughed and said, "Oh, maybe from the yoga mats." Then walked away fast, too fast. I followed her into the bathroom a minute later. The bottle was on the edge of the sink. Not a tester. A full-sized gift set, labeled to H. It wasn't from me. I never use initials. That's when I knew for sure. The evidence wasn't in one big reveal. It was in the pattern density. The small things lining up into a constellation of betrayal. The alarm. The delay in speech. The fake receipts. The overwritten notes. She'd turned our marriage into an acting job, and I wasn't in the audience. I was the backdrop. And like any good analyst, I didn't react. I archived. I observed. I began preparing. The revenge wasn't going to be a shout. It would be a sequence. Timed. Precise. Like her damn 411 alarm. She was brushing her teeth when I did it. Still in her robe, humming something tuneless, mouth full of foam. I walked into the bathroom with her phone in one hand and a matchbook in the other. She turned, confused, half choking on mint. I didn't say a word. Just opened the Notes app and started reading out loud. "Excuse if he asks about cafe," I said, flatly. "Make sure he never meets Brent." She froze. Toothbrush still in her mouth. I kept going. "Talk about dreams more. Get him to invest." My voice cracked on that one. Not from pain, not yet, from the sheer weight of how much contempt it takes to organize betrayal like a spreadsheet. I lit a match. One by one, I started dropping her crystal index cards, the ones she kept by her nightstand for daily emotional resonance, into the bathroom sink and lit them like tiny traitors. Obsidian for honesty. Quartz for clarity. Rose for love. Each one went up with the sharp scent of essential oils and fraud. She spit the toothpaste into the sink next to the fire and screamed, "What are you doing?" I didn't look at her. "You think you're clever. You're not. You're lazy. You're arrogant. And worst of all, you thought I was too dull to notice." I pulled her robe drawer open and took out the navy blue hoodie. The one she claimed was so comfy she stole it from a friend. Not quite. It still smelled like that citruswood cologne. I threw it into the tub and poured isopropyl alcohol on it, then lit it without flinching. She cried out, tried to stop me, but I blocked her with one hand and said, "You let him wear this here? In my house?" She backed away, hand shaking, but I wasn't done. I opened the medicine cabinet and pulled out the tiny envelope she kept taped to the back. I'd found it a week ago, a folded receipt for Café Thorn, another for a motel on Lincoln Street, paid in cash. I dropped them both into the flaming hoodie. The fire flared and hissed, sending smoke up the tile like the house itself was gagging on our lies. "I invested in your dream," I said, voice rising. "You let me fund your image while you played part-time whore in my bed." Her eyes widened. "Don't talk to me like that." I laughed, not just laughed, howled. A laugh so sharp it hurt my throat. "Like what? Like I finally see you? Like I see exactly what you are? You're not even original. You're a cliché with Pinterest quotes and orgasm debt." That's when she snapped. Threw a candle at the wall. It missed by 2 feet. "You have no right to." "I have every right," I roared, stepping closer. "You opened this door. You timed it with an alarm. You wrote scripts for it. You planned this like a damn hostage extraction. And you think I don't have the right to burn it all down?" She was crying now, ugly, unfiltered sobs. "I made mistakes. You made decisions," I shot back. "Mistakes or accidents. This was a campaign." I stepped into the hall and started grabbing her framed vision board, the one with the glued-on yoga magazine cutouts and big red letters that said, "Alignment Intuition Power." I brought it back into the bathroom, dropped it in the tub, and watched it catch like it had been waiting for it. She screamed and lunged at me, tried to beat at my chest, but I didn't move. I just stood there, letting her flail. Then she stopped, collapsed onto the floor like a puppet with cut strings. I crouched beside her, not out of comfort, just to make sure she heard me. "You're going to lose everything," I whispered. "And you won't even know when it started. Because you never saw me. You saw a stepping stone. And now you're going to drown alone on the other side." I stood, walked out of the bathroom, and locked the door behind me. Not to trap her, to protect the house from more flames. I went downstairs, opened my laptop, and started the paperwork. Ownership transfers, lock changes, liquidation clauses. She wanted power? I'd show her what real control looked like. The illusion was gone. This wasn't my wife. This was a fraud in a bathrobe. And she just watched the first flare of a fire she couldn't put out. The next morning, she acted like none of it happened. The scorched tub, the crystal ashes, the singed hoodie, she walked past them like set pieces on a stage she no longer acknowledged. She made coffee. She opened the blinds. She hummed. I watched from the kitchen table, and something in my brain clicked. Not rage, not grief, something colder. She wasn't ashamed. She was adapting. That's when I understood. The only real betrayal wasn't the cheating, it was the performance afterward. She thought she could reset the narrative, like dragging a video timeline back to frame 1. What scared me most wasn't that she'd slept with someone else, It was how fluidly she compartmentalized it. No cracks. No residual tremors. Just soft smiles and decaf. I replayed everything in my head with new filters, like a forensics expert revisiting old footage with upgraded software. The "I love you" she said before bed every night, it had no weight. I realized she used the same 3 variations, always in the same order. Love you. Love you too. Night. Love. Like automated dialogue in a game. I dug deeper. Pulled old voicemails. Compared them to the ones she left me last week while running errands. No tonal variation. Same cadence. Same performative softness. She wasn't expressing emotion, she was hitting marks. Practiced. Calibrated. I checked our photos next. Not the ones she posted, the ones I took. And there it was again, her smile. Always open-mouthed, tilted left, chin down. Manufactured symmetry. I remembered her practicing that pose in the mirror years ago, saying it made her look authentic. That word stuck with me, look authentic. Not be. That's when the mental shift happened. I stopped thinking of her as a person. Started seeing her as a construct. An emotional replicant built to sustain a particular lifestyle. I wasn't her partner. I was her platform, financial, social, logistical. My routines gave her cover. My silence gave her confidence. My love? That was the safest lie of all. She knew I'd never scream in public. Never hit. Never humiliate. That gave her room. She moved like a tenant in a rent-controlled lie. So I stopped grieving. Grieving implies loss. But what I had wasn't real. I was mourning a puppet. And puppets don't deserve funerals. They deserve decommissioning. That's when I started drafting the exit plan, not just revenge, redesign. I wasn't going to take her down emotionally. That's what she'd expect, tears, confrontations, begging. No, I'd let her believe she won. I'd rebuild her dream on paper, the dental suite, the holistic vision, the silent investor story she told everyone about her, alignment partner. I'd use every detail she gave me in those late-night talks where she thought she was charming me into partnership. Every Pinterest board she showed me, every photo of color palettes, every client list she brainstormed with fake sincerity, I logged it all. Created the LLC under my name. Set up the accounts. Registered the brand. All hers in appearance, all mine in legality. I built the scaffolding while she prattled about marketing and chose overpriced pendant lights. She thought she was seducing an investor. What she was doing was giving me ammunition. But I didn't stop there. I pulled Brent into the plan too, indirectly. I created fake inquiries for clarity coaching sessions under a female alias, fed him just enough praise and vulnerability to make him reckless. Within 3 sessions, he was sending advice about overthrowing the masculine structure and claiming erotic power through deceit. I screen recorded everything. Sent it anonymously to the real investors of the yoga retreat they both came from, the ones who branded themselves as trauma-informed professionals. Let's just say Brent's coaching profile was pulled from their directory within a week. Meanwhile, Holly was still waking up at 7, still ignoring the fact that our mattress smelled like someone else's sweat. Still talking about her future like she had won. I noticed she started wearing my mother's ring, the one she once called tacky and depressing. When I asked why, she smiled and said, "It feels grounding now." No, it felt strategic. It was a prop. She was telegraphing nostalgia to keep me soft. Too late. I was already concrete. That ring? I'd taken a photo of it the day before. The one she wore now was a replica. The real one I'd sold, quietly, to a jeweler 2 counties over. Just to see if she'd notice. She didn't. She didn't care about meaning. She cared about appearance. It was all theater. So I wrote the final act. The paperwork. The closures. The pre-scheduled emails to suppliers informing them of her name being dropped from the lease. A little note left in her wellness journal that simply said, "Your story ends on a Tuesday." Because it would. She just didn't know which one yet. I was done waiting for apologies. Puppets can't apologize. They only malfunction. And she was already glitching. She came home in yoga pants and lip gloss, the kind of look she used to reserve for date nights or client dinners. But lately, it was just what she wore for her morning walks. She didn't see me at first. I was sitting at the kitchen island with her phone in one hand and the key to the new dental suite in the other. She paused when she saw me, and I watched the flicker happen behind her eyes, that microsecond of panic she couldn't mask fast enough. "Hey," she said, a little too bright. "You're home early." I didn't answer. Just held her gaze. She dropped her bag, casually, like we were still pretending. That's when I said it. "You recycled your 'I love yous.' Same 3 lines. Same timing. You didn't mean a word of it." Her lips parted slightly, like maybe she'd misheard me. But I didn't stop. You sent me, "Love you too," at 8:01 every night for 3 years. I checked. I graphed the timestamps. You missed 3 nights total, all nights you were with him. Her face started to harden, but I leaned in before she could switch gears. He calls you H. That's how you save his name. H for healing. H for hidden. H for hollow. I hope he's worth what you just lost. She took a breath to speak, but I cut her off. No, you don't get to talk yet. You're going to listen. You're going to hear yourself, because I've memorized every lie you told. I opened her notes app and read, set alarm 4:11 Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Make sure he never meets Brent. Excuse if he asks about cafe. I dropped the phone on the counter like it was radioactive. She backed up a step, eyes wide. You don't understand, she started. I stood up. No, I understand perfectly. You built a plan. You used me. You rehearsed your lines like a school play. You called your betrayal alignment. You turned your infidelity into a brand. She opened her mouth again, but I just shook my head. You wore my mother's ring, the one you called funeral jewelry. You put it on after you cheated to create sympathy optics. You thought you were clever. You're not. You're just sloppy with flair. Her voice cracked. I didn't want to hurt you, Mitch. I laughed, short and bitter. You didn't care enough to want anything. You just didn't think you'd get caught. I tossed the dental suite key onto the counter beside her phone. That's the lease key. The suite you told everyone was yours. I filed it under my LLC. You're not on the deed. Not on the insurance. Not even on the mail slot. She blinked. You said, I said what you needed to hear. Just like you did. The difference is, I meant it at the time. You never meant any of it. She started crying, and for a second, I almost faltered until I remembered the footage of her laughing in our kitchen with Brent, in my t-shirt, drinking from my mug. Spare the tears, I said coldly. You rehearsed those too. In the mirror. Remember? I've got the video. You thought the bathroom camera only covered the door. Her legs wobbled and she leaned on the counter. You're scaring me, she whispered. I leaned in. Good. Fear means you're finally present. She tried to speak again, but I was already walking away. I stopped at the door. You never once apologized. You never said, I did this. You said, I didn't want to hurt you. That's not regret. That's PR. I turned back just enough for her to see the disgust on my face. You were never sorry. Just surprised the curtain fell before you finished your act. Her mouth opened, but there was nothing left to say. The silence between us wasn't heavy, it was clean. It was freeing. For the first time, I didn't see the woman I married. I saw the parasite she became. And I smiled, just once, because the game was already over. She just hadn't checked the scoreboard yet. She waited until after midnight to try it. That's when she always thought I was weakest, late, quiet, emotionally spent. I was sitting in the living room with a glass of water, just staring into the dark, when she came in wearing the same satin robe she used to parade around in when she wanted something: compliments, distraction, forgiveness. She moved slowly, like a dancer who forgot the choreography but hoped the audience wouldn't notice. Mitch, she whispered, stepping barefoot across the hardwood. Please. I know I made mistakes. I didn't look at her. I let the silence stretch long enough for her to doubt the air itself. You didn't make mistakes, I said calmly. You made investments. I was just the one you thought wouldn't audit the books. She stepped closer, hand hovering over my shoulder, like she thought physical proximity could erase betrayal. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I turned and looked at her for the first time that night. Define this far. The part where you wrote a cheat sheet for lying to me? Or the part where you let another man come into my home before sunrise and drink from my mug? Her face twisted, first into a wince, then into something shakier. I was lost, she said. You pulled away. We stopped talking. I needed connection. I set the glass down slowly. You needed novelty. You wanted attention without cost. And you found it in the human equivalent of a podcast ad. That cracked her composure. She started crying loud, gasping sobs that once might have stirred something in me. But now it just sounded like bad theater. I can change, she choked. I can fix this. We can fix this. Please, Mitch. I'll do anything. She fell to her knees, hands clinging to my thigh like a toddler begging not to be left behind. I looked down at her, disgusted. You practiced crying in the mirror. I saw you. This isn't remorse. It's muscle memory. She sobbed harder, muttering something about trauma, about not knowing how to love properly. My childhood was a mess, she whispered. My dad left. My mom. So did mine. I cut in, voice low. I never became you. She froze for half a second, like the words sliced clean through the last thread holding her narrative together. Then the seduction attempt came, predictable and pathetic. She stood, wiped her eyes, and tried to slide into my lap like we were still living in the highlight reel of our marriage. "Let me remind you what we had," she murmured, pulling the robe loose. I laughed, a sharp, cold sound that made her flinch. "You're expired," I said flatly. "Not physically. Morally. You wore out your truth. Now all that's left is packaging." Her hands dropped. Her lips trembled. She stumbled backward like my words hit harder than a slap. Then came the letter. Of course there was a letter. She pulled it from her robe pocket, crumpled and smudged with fake emotion. "I wrote this," she said, voice shaking. "I've been trying to put it into words." I held out my hand. She gave it to me. I read it aloud, each line dripping with dramatics. I didn't know who I was anymore. I felt invisible. "I never meant to hurt you." I stopped and looked at her. "You misspelled meant. Twice. How do you screw up an apology and a spell check?" Her knees gave out again. She sat on the floor now, truly unraveling, snot and mascara, and this look in her eyes like a rabbit in a snare. "I'll confess," she blurted. "I'll tell your family. I'll explain everything. They'll understand." I nodded slowly. "Too late. They already know." Her face went pale. "You told them?" "No," I said. "I showed them." I stood, walked past her without stepping around, made her shift for me. She clung to my leg again, grabbing like a drowning woman, and I shook her off with a motion as natural as brushing lint from my jeans. I didn't look back. Her sobs followed me down the hall like a broken alarm, loud, meaningless, incapable of changing the facts. I closed the door behind me, not out of spite, but because I'd already started to forget the sound of her voice. She stopped fighting after that night. No more tears, no more seduction, not even guilt-laced breakfast gestures. She drifted around the house like a ghost on borrowed time, pretending to journal, pretending to meditate, pretending to be the version of herself she thought I wanted before she threw it all away. That was fine. Let her play dead while I worked. Every morning she watched TV and scrolled through wellness blogs. I was sealing the cage. Quietly. Precisely. I started with the dental suite. All the contracts, the design firm, the equipment lease, the logo rights, were under my LLC, tied to an address I'd rerouted through a third-party mailbox. Holly still thought it was hers. She was busy planning social media teasers and mock photo shoots for Horizon Dental Collective, bragging to friends in group chats about her space and her vision. I read every word. I'd installed keyloggers and screen mirroring weeks earlier. She didn't know I saw the messages to Brent. "I feel so empowered. Mitch is totally funding it. Once it's open, we'll figure out the next phase." That phrase, next phase, was the green light. It meant she thought I was still asleep. Good. Let her think the man she betrayed was still 3 steps behind. Because I was 10 steps ahead. I scheduled a soft opening, complete with photographers and fake clients, paid actors from a gig site. Holly believed it was a marketing stunt. She signed papers I drafted carefully, every signature waiving her rights as a partner, every clause transferring brand control to me after launch. I told her it was to simplify taxes. She smiled and signed like a child drawing hearts in a yearbook. I kept the papers in a locked briefcase, same place I stored the audio files. Hours of her whispering things to Brent over burner calls. I ran a voice identification overlay. It was her, no question. I even clipped a section where she mocked me for organizing her finances. "He's like a human spreadsheet," she laughed. "Honestly, he makes it so easy." That file was named asset01.mp3. Then I contacted her alignment coach, a slick-talking fraud who sold ebooks about feminine polarity. I posed as a concerned investor interested in a wellness dental collaboration and asked for a consultation. He tried to sell me a $3,000 monthly coaching package. I recorded every word and sent the audio to a reporter I knew at a health consumer site. Not for immediate publication, just to plant a seed. I had time. Meanwhile, I set up a honeypot account, an email address that looked like a client lead, someone interested in joint branding with Horizon Dental. She replied, eager, careless, and arrogant. She offered backdoor branding deals in exchange for an upfront deposit, all while promising Brent a cut. I cross-referenced the messages, attached them to the notarized contracts she signed, and flagged them with my lawyer. Yes, I had one now. He was quiet, efficient, and very clear. She's not entitled to anything. I left nothing to interpretation. Not the lease. Not the logo. Not the furniture she picked out with Brent at overpriced boutiques. I'd already sold most of it online under a liquidation LLC she didn't know existed. Her name wasn't on any receipt. Just her dreams. Dreams I now owned in full. The final piece was Brent. I created a burner email account, sent him a fake invoice from a vendor tied to the dental suite, listing his name as the project coordinator. I wanted a paper trail. He replied, confused, but didn't deny involvement. I sent that reply to Holly's sister, the same sister who had promised startup funding once the suite launched. The sister who hated Brent. I made sure the email timestamp matched the morning Holly said she was at yoga. I knew it would detonate trust in slow motion. Holly still walked around the house like we were on pause. I can't wait to see how this all turns out, she said once, passing me with herbal tea and a vision board in hand. I nodded, smiling just enough, because I already knew how it turned out. I had the keys, the accounts, the recordings, the receipts, the brand. She had optimism and delusion, and those depreciate fast. It started the morning she tried to post a launch teaser for the dental suite on Instagram, her big moment, the one she believed would rebrand her entire life. The photo didn't upload. She tried again. Then her password failed. Then her account locked. She reset it, only to find every post gone, wiped. Her followers count dropped to 0. And in its place, a single image, a blank white square with the caption, "This business was built on betrayal." Below it, screenshots. Her texts to Brent. Her notes app confessions. Her email trying to sell access to client lists she didn't own. She screamed, the kind of high-pitched panic wail you only hear from people watching their reflection shatter in real time. She called her sister. Straight to voicemail. She texted. No reply. She emailed. Nothing. An hour later, a new message came through. A legal notice from her sister's attorney. All future financial support frozen pending fraud review. She collapsed on the kitchen floor, sobbing, clutching her phone like it could take the pain back. I watched from the doorway, silent. She didn't even look up. That afternoon, she tried going to the suite, the one she still believed belonged to her. But the locks had been changed. The sign was gone. A notice was taped to the glass, temporarily closed for ownership reassignment. She banged on the door until a neighbor called building security. They escorted her off the property. No force, just finality. I had left nothing for her to fight. The next blow came fast. Brent vanished. She texted him 8 times. Then 15. Then called. Straight to voicemail. Then the number disconnected. A day later, she opened her laptop to find her shared Google Drive cleared out. Every photo, every plan, every draft of their next phase gone. She searched her iCloud. Locked. Her bank account, frozen. She called the branch, shrieking, demanding answers. They told her a fraud investigation had been initiated due to inconsistencies in the documentation of her suite expenses. There's no record of your name on these transactions, the banker said calmly. You'll need to speak with your legal representative. She didn't have one. She had me, and I was already 10 moves ahead. Then came the real sting. Her girls' circle, the inner crew of fellow yogis, coaches, and self-branded empaths, invited her to a dinner. She went, desperate for normalcy, dressing like nothing had happened. Halfway through appetizers, someone asked about the screenshots. Someone else said they didn't feel energetically safe around her. Her best friend stood up and said, "You didn't just cheat on a husband. You scammed an entire identity." Holly sat frozen, mascara cracking under restaurant lights, as one by one, they got up and left her sitting there alone, the bill unpaid. She called me that night. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail, 5 minutes long, voice trembling, swinging between apology and rage, desperation and deflection. "You ruined my life," she hissed near the end. "You were supposed to love me." I played it once, then deleted it. The next morning, a stranger knocked at her door and handed her an envelope. She opened it with shaking fingers and found divorce papers, neatly organized and already processed. The date on the cover letter? Her birthday. She dropped it like it burned. She looked around the house, our house, and suddenly saw it as what it truly was now, temporary lodging. Her clothes were still in the closet, her books still on the shelf, but every item was just set dressing in a life that no longer belonged to her. She wasn't crying anymore. just breathing fast, shallow, like she couldn't get enough air. I walked past her that afternoon, keys in hand, suitcase packed. She stared at me like a ghost might, not angry, just stunned that I still existed in a form she couldn't touch. "Where will you go?" she asked. I shrugged. "Anywhere that doesn't stink of you." Her eyes glossed over, mouth opening to speak, but nothing came out. Because there was nothing left to say. I walked out without looking back. And the door, for the first time in years, didn't echo when it closed. She thought it was over. She thought the papers, the silence, the isolation, that was the end. But the end doesn't come in silence. It comes in clarity. And I wanted her to see it all, every jagged angle of what she'd broken. So I waited. Let her simmer in the wreckage a little longer. Let her feel the stillness of a future that no longer acknowledged her name. And then I delivered the final strike. It began with an email, one she received at 9:03 a.m. on what would have been our wedding anniversary. The subject line read, "Your blueprint." Inside was a link. No message. No sender. Just a link titled, "Watch this alone." She clicked it. Of course she clicked it. I know her curiosity like I know the seams of her lies. The video opened on static. Then slow black and white footage of our house. Not surveillance, memory. Clips I'd saved over the years. Her laughing in the kitchen. Her meditating by the window. Her twirling in the mirror. But overlaid with voice recordings. Her voice. Reading from her own notes app, make sure he never meets Brent. Say I'm meditating. Set the alarm for 4:11. Say it's from a yoga app. Her voice was calm, clinical, self-assured. Then came the texts, screen recordings of her messages to Brent, scrolling on loop, juxtaposed against screenshots of the contracts she signed. Then the footage, short, brutal. Brent walking through our garage, wearing my shirt. Her voice off camera, calling him my piece. I ended it with a still image, her face frozen mid-smile, holding the dental sweet keys like they were gold. Underneath, dreams built on lies collapsed louder. Then it faded to black. I'd uploaded it to an unlisted link, but made sure it found its way to her sister. Her boss. Her spiritual retreat director. Her closest friend from college. No caption. Just truth, raw and timed. One by one, I watched their names disappear from her contact log. Yes, I still had access. Her phone rang less and less. Then not at all. I wasn't done. That afternoon, I delivered her car to a donation lot. She bought it with her business money, she once said. But the title was in my name. I sold it for pennies, and in her name, I donated the full amount to a local shelter for women rebuilding after domestic betrayal. I sent her a receipt. She screamed into voicemail. "How could you twist my story like that?" I didn't answer. The next morning, she found her old journals, the ones she once filled with affirmations and half-baked erotic poetry, scanned and excerpted online, posted anonymously to a website called liarsanonymous.net. I tagged 3 of her burner accounts and left breadcrumbs for the rest. Not illegal. Not defamatory. Just her own words, curated like art. The site traffic spiked. Someone even turned her words into a spoken word piece, which I submitted anonymously to an underground podcast that specialized in poetic justice. It went viral. The comments were ruthless. "She sounds like the villain in a therapist's origin story. Did she cheat on him with a quote book?" Every word was traceable back to her. No lies. Just full circle exposure. I watched her spiral online, from denial to rage to desperate DMs claiming hacked accounts and misunderstandings. No one bought it. The final scene? I let her come to the house one last time. She stood outside for 3 days, crying, pleading, whispering through the door crack. She left notes. A flower. A folded sweatshirt that used to be mine. I never opened the door. I never even approached it. I watched on camera. She curled up on the porch the 3rd night and whispered, "I didn't mean to destroy it." But she did. She meant every step. And now she finally understood what destruction really looked like. Not loud. Not cruel. Just calculated. Surgical. Permanent. The woman who tried to use me as scaffolding for her fantasy was now stranded in a reality she created alone. And I didn't burn her life. I let her watch it decay piece by piece, with the lights fully on. So here I am. No poetic ending. No reconciliation. No redemption arc. Just me, sitting in a quiet house that finally feels clean. There's no trace of her now. No sound, no scent, not a single thread of that performance she called love. The cushions don't sag where she used to sit. The mirror doesn't fog with her breath. Even the dog stopped waiting for her. I rebuilt everything, piece by piece, and not for her, not even for revenge. For clarity. Because nothing cuts deeper than the truth, especially when you deliver it with silence. She thought I was the safe bet. The predictable man. The one who didn't raise his voice. The one who built routines. What she never understood was that patterns are power. That silence doesn't mean absence, it means calculation. While she was busy playing goddess in a fantasy, I was watching, studying, waiting. And when it was time, I didn't scream. I didn't punch walls or beg for answers. I turned her scripts into contracts. I turned her secrets into fuel. And I burned her carefully, quietly, precisely. The friends she lied to? Gone. The money she siphoned through my name? Reclaimed. The image she polished for years? Cracked and left in full display. She walks through a world now where every door she used to lean on has vanished. She's not hated. She's forgotten. That's the worst fate for a woman like her, not pain, but irrelevance. And for those of you still reading this, wondering if I miss her, let me be clear, I don't. I miss who I thought she was. And even that's fading. Because what she really was a mirror. A reminder that trust without scrutiny is suicide. That love, without logic, is a loaded gun in someone else's hand. Do I regret what I did? Not for a second. I didn't win her back. I won my soul. I got to see who I really am when the illusion shattered. And I'm proud of him. I didn't just survive betrayal. I engineered justice. I didn't need courts or violence. I needed precision. I needed truth. She called me cold. I called it focus. She said I went too far. I say she didn't go far enough because she never thought I'd fight back with intelligence. She wanted to write a story where I disappeared in shame. Instead, she became the epilogue in mine. I've told you everything. Every step, every shift, every quiet move that led to her collapse. Now I'll leave you with this. Not a plea. Not advice. Just a question. If someone spent months rewriting your reality, erasing your worth, and cashing out your loyalty for their convenience, what would you have done?